So, 8 months after Bola Tinubu was declared the winner of Nigeria's presidential election, the Supreme Court has upheld his victory, dismissing the attempt by his main challengers, Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi, to overturn the result, alleging irregularities. The panel of 7 justices said their petitions lacked merit. So the moment ended up not so much making legal history as some had hoped, but as a damp squib and an anticlimax all wrapped in one after a fiercely fought election and a disputed result that has polarized opinion in Nigeria. But unquestionably, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is now affirmed as the president of Nigeria, even if the judgment follows a pattern in a country where no presidential election result has ever been overturned in this country. President Tinubu's success today will, of course, be a colossal disappointment for some, though perhaps not a huge surprise, and a towering victory for others.
Started from day one to work hard, regardless of, the court cases, okay? And just strengthen my resolve to do more. A challenge of this nature and a future of this nature is more work and more hard work, more dedication. It just appeal to the sense of patriotism of Nigeria to have a change of mindset. Let us be positive about our country, be ready to contribute in all ways possible. There's no promise of El Dorado from day one. We're all in this boat of diversity, a member of the same family, living in the same house, but staying in different rooms. And it is important that we recognize that we have no other country but this one. So we better be committed to it, not for the sake of our own self-aggrandizement. Our commitment to the values, the creed of dedication, patriotism, and commitment to the value of this country. It is extremely important that we have a change of mindset for the sake of our country. Not for us, but for our children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the inheritors of tomorrow.
President Bola Tinubu, and of course his electoral victory now affirmed by the Supreme Court, but it's left this country deeply divided. So how is Nigeria likely now to recover from all that? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Nollywood star, lawyer and spokesperson for the Labour Party's Presidential Campaign Council, Kenneth Okonkwo. Great to see you, Kenneth.
Thank you for having me.
Long day, I imagine, because you were there listening to that very long judgment from the Supreme Court. I mean, you were in court.
Oh, yes.
But we appreciate your being here. So what's your reaction to this judgment? Were you surprised that the Supreme Court affirmed Bola Tinubu as president of Nigeria?
Well, one can say that the judgment of the Supreme Court may have clothed his presidency with constitutionality, because Section 235 made it clear of the Constitution that the decision of the Supreme Court is final, but it has not clothed his presidency with democracy, because democracy means the rule of the people, and it means that power must proceed only from the people. And let me tell you what the Supreme Court said that is very telling. Justice John Inyango Koro, while delivering the judgment, he looked right to his colleagues and looked left. He said, let us admit that the non-uploading of the result on the IREF portal reduced the confidence of the people in the election.
Reduced, but didn't eliminate it.
Good. That is how the judges talk. Reduced means it wasn't as credible as it would have been if the law was obeyed, that said you should upload on the IREF portal for the people to view. And this is in line with all the decisions of the international and local observers.
But not so lacking in credibility that it made them decide that they were going to go against the decision of the lower court.
What they said was, look, the only result we have is the one presented by INEC. We do not have alternative result presented to counter it. Now, let me tell you the implication of that. In mathematics, I did mathematics and I did advanced level mathematics. If you're given a mathematical question and you go straight to quote the answer, they will probably say you stole the answer. You must start with quoting the formula and giving the statements.
Really in statistics.
Good.
You've got to have the formula
before you give the answer.
Yeah.
You know what INEC did? They simply came and quoted an answer that somebody won the election against the express position of the Act. The Act said you have to compile, update, and maintain, polling unit by polling unit, all the results. And you must be ready to show it to any person or political party that demands it. And that is when you would now pronounce a winner. And I'm talking about section 62, subsection 2 and 3 of the Electoral Act. INEC did not. They just woke up one day at the dead of the night, 4:30 a.m., and declared an answer, which we did not know the formula or the statements that they arrived at to get that answer. So how can you tell the petitioners to produce polling unit by polling unit the result to prove their election, where the institution that is bestowed by the power, giving 400 billion naira to do that, failed to do it? And then you're asking, where will we get it from? The credibility of this election will forever be tarnished. And I agree with the Supreme Court that the confidence of the Nigerian people in this election was reduced. And for me, it was destroyed.
But can you, strictly from a legal point of view, do you broadly accept and respect the reasoning of the court in reaching its decision?
The court gives decision issue by issue. If you give me the question issue by issue, I will give you the answer issue by issue. But like I said, the Supreme Court is clothed with the cloak of finality. I disagree with their judgment, but I accept it as a Democrat.
Well, let's go through some of the points that Justice Okoro raised. I mean, what is your assessment? I know you've touched on it briefly, but let's kind of go more pointedly into it. What is your assessment of his pronouncement on the IREV and electronic transmission of results? Because he seemed to have decided that it is not the ultimate method of collation.
Good. And that is where, with respect to the Supreme Court, they got that all wrong. And I'm talking about the law, not my opinion. The Supreme Court was romancing paragraph 93 of the regulations and guidelines of the conduct of election by INEC. Thank God, by even mentioning the paragraph 93, they have agreed that subsidiary legislation is part of our laws. Now, paragraph 93 is not even applicable to this petition at all. Paragraph 93 is in a case where there is no hard copy of Form EC8A. What you would do in a case where there is no hard copy of Form EC8A. It is not the case of the petitioners that there was no hard copy of Form EC8A. So the Supreme Court, even relying on 93, is even wrong. It does not even apply. But let me tell you what they did that brought the whole contradiction. Supreme Court was saying that uploading on IREV was not mandatory. Good. Even by the paragraph 93 they quoted. Paragraph 93 said, if Form EC8A is not there, you use the result electronically transmitted and you use the result uploaded on IREV to declare the result. So if the law does not mandate the uploading of result on IREV, where would you see it to use? This is by the paragraph 93, which they love so much, which is not applicable because it is not the paragraph that is responsible for collation. The paragraph that is responsible for collation is paragraph 48, A and B. I am surprised the Supreme Court did not even mention it at all. Let me tell you what it said. It said there shall be collation only when the collation officer confirms the veracity of the result in the beavers of the accredited voters, and confirms, I'm talking about B now, of 48, of the number of votes that is transmitted electronically into the system. That if the collation officer does not have it to confirm, to verify, there shall be no collation. This is by paragraph 48AB. Meanwhile, paragraph 38I and II said INEC must electronically transfer and transmit using beavers to the electronic system. And you do a scan copy of the result and upload it on IREV. These are two different things. Transmitting to the INEC server, or whatever you call it, and uploading on IREV. These are two different things. Stated in paragraph 38, I and II. Let me tell you something. Supreme Court talked about section 60, which talks about transfer. They did not mention anything about section 64. And section 64 is the section that deals with collation. And I'm talking about the Electoral Act. And section 64, 4AB, made it clear. The collation officer shall collect result and announce it, subject to his or her verification of the manual result with the result in beavers and with the results electronically transmitted. I'm talking about section 64, 4A and B. Supreme Court did not mention it. So how can you be mentioning sections that has nothing to do with collation? And then you're telling us that it is not in accordance with the law.
Well, you sound like you make a convincing argument. Maybe you should have been the lead lawyer for the Labour Party making that argument, because in terms of the submission,
yes,
which of course includes your party, the Labour Party, the petitioner's submission, I mean, with regard, for instance, to malpractices at polling units, I mean, the court said it didn't see the facts from the petitioners, only what appeared to be anecdotal evidence. I mean, did you get a sense of clarity there? Because you have to wonder, I mean, in a court, as you well know, it's about evidence and the quality of your arguments to support that evidence. I mean, do you think the Labour Party's sort of legal team perhaps fell short?
Well, we have very brilliant lawyers. I respect them very passionately. They put in their best. But when it comes to
their best clearly wasn't good enough.
It was good enough. But according to the realist school of jurisprudence, whatever the judges say is the law becomes the law, irrespective of whatever you do as a lawyer.
It's a dictatorship, now, is it?
So, but, you know, I was talking about the collation, because our problem in this country is not people going to vote. It's what happens at the collation centers. The whole idea of the electronic transmission is not about free fare. It is about credible election. It is to check the malpractice that goes on in the collation. Good. Now, you know, collations are at different levels. You have the ward level, you have the local government level, you have the state level, you have the federal government level. Do you know, INEC made provision for electronic transfer for each level. So INEC said when you finish the election at the polling unit, you transmit from the polling unit in real time using beavers. And then you will carry the form EC8A and the beavers, and I'm talking about paragraph 38, III. You carry these two to the collation center, that's the first ward center. And the collation officer must compare the two results. And I'm talking about paragraph 50V. And when they finish comparing and collating, they transmit electronically from the collation center. And I'm talking about 50XX, with which the next collation level will use to collate. And when they transmit at the local government level, when they finish, and I'm talking about paragraph 53, XII, they will still transmit electronically to guide the one in the state. And I'm talking about 54, XII, paragraphs, regulations, INEC wrote as subsidiary legislation. I'm surprised the Supreme Court did not see all this.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it sounds sort of, for the ordinary person on the street, I mean, you are obviously a legal expert. It sounds monstrously complicated, but let's go
It's straightforward.
Let's go to the issues that appear to be more straightforward. For example, the issue of the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja. They adopted the position of the Election Petitions Tribunal that Abuja has no special status. What is your reaction to that?
The interpretation of the Constitution is the sole prerogative of the court.
So you agree with their interpretation then?
Whether I agree or not is not the issue. This is now the position of the law. And like I said, you can't take the power away from them. It is the power the Constitution has given to them.
Right.
They say, after reading this, this is our interpretation. Prior to this, such a situation has not arisen in practical terms in any election. This is the first time that a presidential candidate will be so unpopular that he did not win 25% in the FCT. That's why I said, you may have had a constitutional government, but not a democratic one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That is their interpretation, and I respect it.
Just to confirm that, in terms of some consolation to be taken away from that judgment by the opposition parties, they did say, and you confirmed that not uploading the result electronically reduced the confidence of Nigerians. And
that implicitly means there was no credibility in it, in the eyes of the people.
It doesn't mean that there was it means that...
Can you interpret it?
Well, I don't want to get into the verbiage, but it just means that there perhaps could have been more confidence rather than less.
Well, at least what you said is there was less.
Yeah,
from your interpretation.
But it depends on how you quantify
in
less.
Society,
you see what I mean?
Professor Mahmoud
That's really
resigned by that statement from the Supreme Court.
Yes, you could make that argument.
No, I have been making it. And thank God the Supreme Court has
you could certainly make that argument.
That you did not do what you ought to have done to get the credibility of this election and make it convincing to the people. And after spending this humongous amount, my own opinion respectfully is that he should step down.
So what's the next move for the Labour Party? Is it now to look towards 2027? Because, I mean, Peter Obi still commands a very large, almost fanatical following with the obedience. I mean, clearly he's still got a political future.
So before moving to the next level, will it surprise you to hear that Supreme Court did not make any determination at all on our issue 4? Which is about the forfeiture of $460,000 by the second respondent, which is Bola Tinubu, for the proceeds of narcotics and money laundering, which was imposed on him. In contrariness to Section 137(1)(d) of the Constitution, the Supreme Court did not make any pronouncement on it. They did not say anything about the issue. So wouldn't it be right for me to say the judgment is either incomplete or incomprehensive? Because the law is that the court is under a duty to pronounce on every issue brought to it by any petitioner or by a party. I did not hear it. I did not know the reason.
Right. But clearly they've delivered their judgment. And as you conceded, it's a final judgment.
That is exactly what I'm saying, that I accept as a Democrat, but I disagree.
No, I understand that. But what I'm asking you now is, what's the next move for the Labour Party?
My principal, Peter Obi, will always be my mentor. You can imagine a man that came in, shook the system, moved gloriously in. Until today, nobody has said anything that dented his image in character, in capacity, and incompetence. That is the people's leader. So he has the brightest future. And when he calls us and tells us what the future is, then we will follow accordingly.
But would you, moving forward, would you, in the Labour Party and perhaps as an individual, are you prepared to work with President Tinubu, or is that going to be hard, given that he's someone you've been very critical of?
I just told you I have a mentor.
Well, you can have more than one mentor.
Well,
or more than one boss.
When I have more than one boss, I'll let you know. So for now, I give him the privilege to determine the next line of action.
Well, what about your members? I mean, do you expect the elected ones to possibly start defecting? I mean, lawmakers, for instance, who feel the pressure of your loss in the National Assembly? I mean, we've seen that happen with losing parties in the past. Or do you think that the Labour Party has an ideology that binds them together and they've forged their politics in it?
Let me concede that a whole lot of people are in politics for different reasons. Some people are there to make the money. Some people are there to make the power. Some people are there to make the people. I belong to that category that entered politics to make the people, because the greatness I enjoy today is from the love of people. I cannot say the same thing with people whose intention is to make money or to make power. Whatever party they belong to, their drive will always be, where is their bread buttered? And so you should expect anything to happen. And until it happens, you would have to make me God for me to know the intent of man, which I am not.
Well, I certainly will not attempt to make you
God bless you.
But I do enjoy talking with you, and I think that your brilliance always comes through every time we talk. Thank you very much indeed, Kenneth. Kenneth Okonkwo is a Nollywood star, lawyer, and spokesperson for the Labour Party's Presidential Campaign Council. Good to see you again.
All right.